Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Speak On It. I am your boy, R.W. Coolins. Welcome, welcome. First and foremost, giving honor to God who allows me to come at you in this manner on a weekly basis. How's everybody doing out there this morning? Hopefully everybody's safe and sound and making it through. Hopefully you're making it through this morning as you do every morning. Um, First, I want to send prayers and blessings out to everybody and anybody that's affected by hurricane/tropical storm Debbie. It's going all up and down the East Coast. A lot of flooding, a lot of damage. Check on your folks, check on your peoples, check on all those that could be affected, that are affected, all those out there that are affected. Send the thing, post the thing on Facebook like you always do, saying you're safe from the storm or anything like that. This was a big one. This was a big one. Tore up a lot of things between Florida all the way up, and I think it's heading up the East Coast now. I know it hit in Maryland, Baltimore, and Annapolis, got some flooding and everything, but hopefully everybody's safe. So let's send our prayers out to them, make sure everybody's all right up and down the East Coast. South Carolina got hit pretty hard as well. I think Georgia got hit pretty good. All the states up and down, North Carolina, South Carolina, all those, Georgia, Virginia, the East Coast got hit. So keep those folks in our prayers, and let's pray that everybody that you know made it through safely, and those that we don't know, hopefully they're able to recover from this storm and continue to move on. So let's go ahead and get this in here. I have to do it each week. Got to do it each week. Can I vote? www.nass.org. Can I vote? National Association of Secretaries of State.org. Can I vote? You need to go in here, and we got the slides up today. You just go in here to the website, www.nass.org. Can I vote? Once you get in there, you go through the slides. You go in there, pick this up. You want to check your voter registration status. Voter registration status, the one in the middle there with the circle around the small I. Voter registration status. You want to click on that. Then you want to go to put in your state. Click your state that you're in, that you know I hope you're registered in. Make sure you're registered in that state. Go to the next one after you check the state, and then all this information you put in, you can put all the information or just your last four digits of your social security number. Click on it, check your records, search for your records, make sure everything is correct for your voter registration in your state. Let's make sure, and I've been talking about this for about a year now. So let's make sure that you're registered in the right way in your state to vote on November 5th. So we're not waiting until November 4th or November the 5th to find out if you're registered in the right way. www.nass.org. Can I vote? This is nothing new to anybody that's been tuning in, but if you are new, let's go here. www.nass.org. Can I vote? That's where we're at. That's what we're doing. We're trying to make sure everybody. And here's the thing. I put this information out there. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever you may be, whoever you may be able to wanting to vote for or whatever is irrelevant. Go in there and make sure you're registered to vote in the right way in your state. That's it. That's all I'm saying. Put this information out there for you so you can get it right. So you can get it right and make sure you are right. All right. So it's an unscripted Saturday, y'all. Unscripted. I got a couple things I want to touch on. Some of the things in the news, some of the things that aren't sitting well with me, with some things that are being said about some of the politicians. There's one story I want to go back to that we talked about back on. Can I find it? This was a story that we talked about back in July 27th of 2023. On episode 24 of 2023. And we're going to get into that a little bit later on, but let's go and get into this. Let's get this thing going. Y'all ready? Let's go. In the news. Well, we all know it's election season, and we all know there's going to be all kind of propaganda floating around and lies being told and people wanting to put their story into what they think is true compared to what is actually true. So this week we seen, and I didn't really watch it, but we seen where former President Donald Trump did a press conference in Mar-a-Lago, and there was a lot of rambling that went on in his Mar-a-Lago speech that he did earlier this week. Julie Kenny Primo, good morning. Appreciate you. Thanks for the support. Terrence Collins, good morning. Appreciate support, my brother. Thank you. Thank you. So he did a lot of rambling and everything, but there's one thing that jumped out at me, and this is the thing that this is where we know that there are some people who lie so much that they start believing their own lies. And then when you get people to come back and debunk these lies, they try to sue and so on and so forth. So there was a story that Donald Trump brought up saying that he was in a almost helicopter crash in helicopter crash in California. And in this story, he said that he was on a helicopter with I just forgot his name. I'm sorry, I didn't write it down today. This is unscripted. I didn't write his name. Willie Brown, former mayor, San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown. And he said Willie Brown was on the plane with him. They almost crashed. They almost died, but it ended up landing correctly and everything. But Willie Brown, in conjunction with that, said he was never on this helicopter with Donald Trump. And then the other Brown from California said that he was on the helicopter. Now, the difference between these two is one is black and one is white. Now, I don't know how you forget who is who, but you got to remember who we're dealing with. But also Gavin Newsom was also on this helicopter, and both of them said that there was no threat of them crashing in this helicopter that they say they was on. But also in this conversation, he said that Willie Brown, the black Willie Brown, said that he said a lot of disparaging things about Kamala Harris while they were on this helicopter when they were about to die because it was about to go down. This is what he said. These are words, not mine. However, Willie Brown said he never said anything about Kamala Harris. The other Brown, and I can't remember his first, the other Brown, who was a politician in California, said that they never had no discussion about Kamala Harris. And then Gavin Newsom said that the helicopter wasn't going to crash or anything. And so it just shows you this repeated playbook of Donald Trump where he throws things out there to see if it's going to stick to the wall. And a lot of people fall for it that are big supporters of his. Reggie P. good morning, my brother. Appreciate you. James Battle, good morning, my brother. Appreciate you. So also in this, you have to step back for a minute and ask yourself, because there's a lot of questions about his cognitive decline, which is what they were talking about with Joe Biden. And now that Joe Biden is out of the race for president, now he's still the acting president, but he's not in the race to be reelected as president, Kamala Harris, and we'll get into Tim Walz here shortly. But now that Joe Biden is not in the conversation anymore for president, we're starting to really see the difference in where Donald Trump's cognitive abilities are starting to deteriorate. They don't want to admit it. They don't want to talk about it, but it's more prominent now because the concentration is not on Joe Biden and where his missteps were. This man is on an island by himself right now as the old geezer in the presidential race. I said it. The old geezer in the presidential race is in the spotlight now, and we're starting to see these things very clearly compared to where we gave him the benefit of the doubt before, because in some people's opinions, Joe Biden's cognitive decline was even worse. That's where we're at. So when you listen to this man get up here and tell these lies and put this propaganda out there, nobody is really raising the flag of where he's at now that we can really see that him and Joe Biden's abilities were neck and neck in the horse race. They were neck and neck as far as where they were at, as far as their stamina, their cognitive decline, and so on and so forth for 79, 80-year-old men running for president. It's being exposed now. And you see it daily now when you see him. And notice, he's not doing as many of those, what do they call them? Speeches, these big events. He also mentioned this week. Now, I want y'all to sit down and be prepared for this. He also mentioned this week that January 6th speech he did on the Capitol, the crowd was much larger than Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s crowd was on that day. I didn't say it, he did. He said that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's crowd, his crowd was just as big on the January 6th day of, trying to overthrow the government. I don't make these things up. I'm just telling you what I read. Something with this man, and I'm gonna put him in the context of a man now, not a former president, not a apprentice person, not a businessman. Donald Trump as a man. There is something very wrong, and I'm just gonna say wrong, that has this man to think that everything revolves around him. And we've seen this before he became president. Everything revolves around him, and he's all about the visuals rather than the factuals. He wants you to look out at that crowd and think that there were thousands and thousands and thousands of people out there for this Stop the Steal speech that he gave or event, and wants to compare it to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's speech he did on the Capitol for equality, justice, and freedom. Something's wrong. And I'm just really reaching out to those who think that they want to reelect this person into office. Let's not even think about or talk about the fact that he's a convicted felon. He has felony charges against him that are now going to be going into the court system, that they are in the court system. Smith just asked for an extension until September because they said they haven't really had a chance to go through the charges that they had against him and see how they need to change them due to this immunity ruling from the Supreme Court. But you have all these different cases and all these different things against this man, and you still have people that support him 100%. Why? You have, and I read this the other day, you have white supremacist groups that are turning on Donald Trump at this time. They're turning against him because some of his policies and some things they don't agree with. A lot of it has to deal with the fact that he's pushing back on Project 2025. Nick Fuentes, who is over top of one of these organizations, one of these white nationalist organizations that he had lunch with in Mar-a-Lago and then tried to say he didn't with him and Kanye West, but that's another story. I digress. But he's saying that he's not supporting him, or he's not supporting the Republican Party as he was because of their change in their message. All these things are coming. He got mad at Jim Rogan. I think it's Jim Rogan this week because he said he was going to vote for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and not Donald Trump. And then he came back and pulled that statement back and said he didn't give him an endorsement. He said he was just looking at maybe going with Kennedy rather than Trump. These are the things that we're hearing. These are the things that are going on. James Battle, he's a narcissist and wants people to worship and praise him. He's psychologically not well. Psychologically not well. That's the best way to put it, because in today's society of mental health and things, we don't want to call people crazy. But he's psychologically not well. And the people that sit here and think that he's the best thing to come along since sliced bread, you're not psychologically well. And you call me what you want. I said it. There's something that is a disconnect with you if you feel that this man should be the president of the United States again compared to what he did last time. Now, mind you, all presidents have flaws. I get that. All of them have had their flaws. But this one, Julie Pirro, Willie Brown said it best when asked why Trump lied. He said Trump is creativity fictional. Creativity fictional. I like that. I'm going to have to put that in my mental Rolodex. Creativity fictional. Wow. So we're coming up with ways to describe this man rather than saying crazy because of the temperature and the things that we're not supposed to say now because of the mental health thing. I get it. Creativity fictional. Psychologically not well. Back in the day, they used to say, boy, about two pieces of bread short of a sandwich. Just throw it out there. But this is where we're at with this candidate. And I want to go back to the helicopter thing where he said that these people were on the helicopter with him. They almost crashed. He couldn't get the people right. The people don't remember ever the helicopter about to crash because I guess they were surveying a forest fire or something out there and everything. And then he mentioned something about on that, well, if they rake the leaves more, we wouldn't have these problems. Different stuff like that, but I digress. But I have this picture, and I have to put it up because I pulled it up the other day, and I want to give a shout out to James Battle because I see he posted it this morning as well. But this picture here, this is Donald Trump with Project 2025 Heritage Foundation, Ken Roberts, on Trump's plane with a man that Donald Trump said he has never met. He don't know him. He ain't got nothing to do with Project 2025. He agrees with some, but not all. And this is a picture of them together. Now, how's he going to deny this? Is he going to make something up about this? What's he going to do? These are the things that people give him the benefit of the doubt for too many times, and they run with it and let him run with it like it's fact. This is a fact. They're smiling. They're on the plane. They know each other. Just because Mr. Dans, as I mentioned last week, Paul Dans stepped down from his position in the Heritage Foundation, do not think that Ken Roberts is not still pushing forward with Donald Trump, Project 2025. Do not think that it's over because Paul Dans left. He may have been the one back there writing it and putting it into fruition as far as the writing and the structure of the project. But this man right here, Ken Roberts, is over the Heritage Foundation. And you can bet your last dollar. You can bet your last dollar that they are still pushing Project 2025 forward with Trump's approval to this day, and will continue through the election and after the election if he becomes president. If he becomes president. Just want to put it out there. Put this in your mental Rolodex. I've never met him. I don't know him. This is what we do. This is how we're operating at this time in this environment. He's scared, y'all. Former President Donald Trump and all his supporters, as well as his campaign, are running scared. And they're running scared behind the fact of the fire that has been lit under the Democratic Party by Joe Biden stepping aside, saying he's not going to run, and Kamala Harris being pushed to the forefront to be the nominee, the Democratic nominee for President of the United States. He's scared. And I'm going to tell you what his biggest fear is. His biggest fear is not that he's going to lose out on the presidency. That's not his biggest fear. His biggest fear is not that he is going to have to face those charges for those felony convictions if he doesn't become president. And he won't be able to eliminate those charges other than Georgia and Arizona where those things are still going on because those are state, not federal. His biggest fear, and this is my opinion, Donald Trump's biggest fear is not that he won't be president and not that he will be convicted for those crimes. His biggest fear is that he's going to lose this election to a black woman, a black Indian woman, who he says is not bright, not educated, not a citizen. All the negatives you can think about, that's his biggest fear, is losing to her. I said it. Mark it down today. August 10th, 2024. That's his biggest fear. Has nothing to do with the politics. Has nothing to do with the policies. When Joe Biden decided to step aside, all you had to do was listen to what the party was saying about him stepping aside, and while Kamala Harris was stepping forward, and the fear in their voice that now, because the one thing they were saying was, we had prepared all this time to beat Biden. We hadn't prepared ourselves to beat Harris or any other candidate for that matter. And him having to face one of the women, a black woman who we know he has a lot of disdain for unless they're doing something for him, Omarosa. We all remember Omarosa during her time under Trump and with Trump. Yeah. That's his biggest fear. Now, as I say, that's my opinion. But I'm pretty sure y'all feel the same way. It had nothing to do with him being able to put his policies in place. It had nothing to do with him not being able to put Project 2025 in place. It had nothing to do with him having to face those convictions. This trumps everything. No pun intended, Trump. This trumps everything. When you really think about it, if you sit back and think about his record as far as who he likes, who he doesn't like, who he disparages, all you got to do is look at what he did at the National Association of Black Journalists. And that'll tell you everything you need to know with those 3 Black women on the panel. And the only one that he felt that he could relate to was the one that works for Fox News. Why? Because she's interviewed him before and she's doing his work for him through Fox News. Harris Faulkner is her name. The other 2 had nothing, didn't want anything to do with them at all. Nothing. But let's transition for a minute because this is something that I seen this week. And as a veteran, it didn't sit well with me. Well, let's start here before I get into this. So this week, presidential nominee for the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris, selected Timothy James Walz, for her VP candidate. I was with the understanding that it was going to either be Shapiro or Kelly out of Arizona. Shapiro from Pennsylvania or Kelly out of Arizona. She picked someone completely different. Walz is a governor of Minnesota, 41st governor of Minnesota since 2019. Now, there's been words, and I'm going to digress here for a minute, but there's been words thrown around that she didn't pick Shapiro because he's a Jew, because he's Jewish. Her husband's Jewish, so we can debunk that right there. But this is coming from the Democratic Party. They tried to throw out there that the reason she didn't pick him was because he was Jewish and she don't like Jewish people and everything, but her husband's Jewish, so we're going to just let that go. Then they said she didn't pick Kelly. The reason she didn't pick Kelly, and I read this later on, was that he is not a big union person or he had a problem with the union in some different ways or something like that. Okay, that's fine. So she went with Mr. Walz. He's been a school teacher, former school teacher. He's currently the governor of Minnesota. He retired from the U.S. Army as a non-commissioned officer, E9, sergeant major. I think he was command sergeant major, something to that extent. He was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives for Minnesota's 1st congressional district in 2006, defeating 6-term Republican incumbent Gil Gucknick. Walz was reelected to the House 5 times before being elected governor of Minnesota in 2018. He was reelected in 2022, defeating Republican nominee Scott Jensen. During his second gubernatorial term, Walz pushed for and signed a wide range of legislation, including tax modifications, free school meals, bolstering state infrastructure, universal gun background checks, codifying abortion rights, and free college tuition for low-income families. So this is what he's done in the time where he was a senator, in the House of Representatives, as well as since he's been governor of Minnesota. But what bothered me more than anything was this week is when they started to question his military service. That's where I have a problem, because they did the same thing with John Kerry when he served, when he was running, the Swift boat thing about he didn't do this, didn't do that. It bothers me when they talk about John McCain not being a hero, but he was captured and so on and so forth. We know all the stories. It bothered me when they talked about George W. Bush and his time when he served in the Guard, and they were saying he was a pilot in the Guard and saying he got out of deployments and all these different things. It bothers me when I hear people question someone's military service who was discharged or chose to retire honorably, and there's nothing in the records other than propaganda as far as how they went about doing what they needed to do when they felt like their career was over. I'm sure that there's a lot of people that we know that have served, that there's people who question whether, what they did when they served. Now, I'll give a prime example. I served the military 21 and a half years. The whole 21 and a half years, I was in transportation. And a lot of people give me a hard time or talk smack to me about my occupation while I was during active duty, as far as me being driving trucks, tractor trailers, buses, logistics movements, all those type things. People would demean and try to say we're a glorified bus driver or any of that thing. You get into those arguments. I don't have a problem with you talking about my occupation in the 21 and a half years I was in. What I do have a problem with is when you question my 21 and a half years of faithful service to this country. I don't care what I was doing and how I was doing it. I did it. That's where my problem comes in, when they start questioning his or J.D. Vance's time in the Marine Corps. J.D. Vance served 4 years in the Marine Corps as a public affairs specialist. He went into Kuwait or Iraq or whatever, embedded with them, and he was doing reports and everything. He was just a journalist per se for his 4 years when he deployed with those. I don't question his service and what he did while he was in. I have a problem when they get into this, because everyone does not serve in the military. Let's be real. Everyone does not choose to serve in the military. However, everyone should not jump on this bandwagon to question what someone's military service was all about. That's where my issue comes in. You can talk smack about whether the Marine Corps, the Navy, or the Air Force, or the Army is better, or who has better facilities. Do not ever question someone's service in the time that they serve. Especially, I'm going to say this here quick, especially if you've never served, or you allow someone who did not serve and avoided being put into the draft because of bone spurs, and question the decisions of generals who do serve. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me. But I know all my veteran brethrens out there and sisterins probably feel the same way. I don't care if you were I don't care if you was in the dining hall cooking omelets. You were of service to your country one way or another. You chose to serve, whether you did 4 years or whether you did 20 years, 30 years, whatever you did, you served. Stop questioning what people did or whether they did their service honorably when you don't know. Now, it says Mr. Walls served in the National Guard for 24 years after enlisting in 1981. In 2001, he completed the 20 years of service needed for retirement from the Guard, but he re-enlisted after the September 11, 2001 attacks. In February 2005, Mr. Walls submitted his official documents to run for Congress and represent Minnesota there. The next month, his National Guard unit was notified of a possible deployment to Iraq within the next 2 years. Within the next 2 years. So in 2005, March of 2005, the National Guard unit was notified of a possible deployment to Iraq. In 2005, February, he had submitted paperwork to run for Congress. Walls retired from military service in May of 2005, later explaining that he wanted to focus on his ongoing campaign for Congress and did not want to violate the Hatch Act, which forbids some political activities by federal government employees. Now, during his military career, his political career, Republicans used the timing of his military retirement as a smear campaign that has been compared to swift boating. A National Guard colleague remarked that at the time Walls retired, his unit's deployment was only a rumor and not yet confirmed. According to the Minnesota National Guard, Walls retired before his unit was officially notified in July of 2005 of their confirmed deployment to Iraq. However, Walls' former superior officer claimed that Walls expressed intent to deploy as late as April of 2005 and retired without properly informing him using the backdoor process. Now, let me get James Battle's comment in here before I go any further. And especially when your running mate is a draft dodger and calls those that did serve suckers and losers. Exactly. And this is where I say I have a problem with people who didn't serve, questioning someone who did serve. And then this question about, well, he chose to retire when his unit decided that, or when they were notified that they would have to deploy probably within the next 2 years. Okay. So if I'm eligible for retirement and I'm going to run for a position in politics, And you can't straddle the fence between the politics and the military because there's certain things you can't do because of the Hatch Act. And I decided to drop my papers, and then the notification comes down to say that we're going to deploy at some time coming up. For people to hold that against me, because here's the thing, people get out of the military every day with a deployment of their people and their peers being coming up. The orders dropping saying you're going to deploy in support of whatever. Happens every day. But they want to make it a political thing because this man chose to retire at the same time after his people were told that they may be deploying in the next 2 years. Well, you can't fault someone if they're at the point of being able to retire if they choose to retire, unless you're just looking for something to try to put some kind of hitch in what they did in their service. Now, his former superior officer claimed that he expressed the intent to deploy as late as April 2005 and retire without properly informing him using the backdoor process. That happens all the time, too. Some people will bypass one person to go to another person in order to go ahead and drop their papers. It happens. But does that make his time, his 24 years in the National Guard, does that make his 24 years stained? Because I don't see anything that says he was dishonorably discharged. I don't see anything that says he had anything in his records that say he didn't serve honorably. I don't see any of that in any of these arguments. Their biggest argument is he retired when he knew his people were going to have to deploy. Come on. What are we doing? Brian Hoodie, good morning, my brother. Appreciate you. James Battle, he had already served 24 years. You can't fault him for retiring. There it is. There it is. This is where I have my biggest problem with what's going on here. And then we're going to talk about J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance, after graduating from Middletown High School in 2003, Vance enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps and served as a military journalist in a non-combative role in Iraq for 6 months in late 2005. He completed a total of 4 years of service. He was part of the public affairs section of the 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing and said that his service taught me how to live like an adult and that he was lucky to escape any real fighting. His decorations include the Marine Corps Good Conduct Medal and Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal. That's the blurb they put out there. Now, mind you, listen to what he said. He said that his service taught me how to live like an adult and that he was lucky to escape any real fighting. He was lucky to escape any real fighting, but in the same time, J.D. Vance wants to disparage Mr. Walz's 24 years of honorable service because he chose to retire before he had to deploy to see any real fighting. Are we really that shallow that we're worried about when you retired and how you retired and if you should have retired and all that? What are we doing? But it's political season. However, we see this in arguments with other folks. If they know somebody that was in that may be gravitating to another levels, then all of a sudden, anything that they want to throw out there that this person did during his military service, now they want to make it a mark on this person like he's not worthy. He's not worthy. My question is, why does this always come around election time? And it says here in this article, Senator J.D. Vance began his Wednesday this week by attacking his vice presidential opponent for supposedly misleading people about his 24 years of service. According to Vance, Walz is deploying stolen valor to promote himself. Veterans and pro-vet groups, however, are hitting back at Vance for questioning Walz's service and rank. And this is what they said. We're setting the record straight, Vote.vets said with a post on the social media site X. They created a graph showing the fact and fiction of Walz's military record. Among the fictional claims, Walz retired because he knew he was going to deploy to Iraq. Walz is using a rank he didn't attain, and that's stolen valor. Vote.vets labeled this claim BS and then explained why. And this is what they said. Now, this is Vote.vets. Tim submitted his retirement request to the U.S. Army National Guard months prior to the notification of his unit's deployment. They explained his unit was fully sourced, staffed, and his request was approved. He retired in May of 2005. On the claim about his rank, the group called that BS as well. The Minnesota National Guard says it's BS. They write, it is entirely accurate to describe Tim as having been a command sergeant major, the rank under which he served, and the Minnesota National Guard has emphasized in public statements that he can be referred to as such. So when you have a veteran, and I'm going to call J.D. Vance a veteran because he served honorably. But when you have a veteran attacking another veteran's service, I have to draw the line there. Because number one, they didn't serve together. Number two, you're going by hearsay. And number three, if his can be questions, yours can be too. And don't get mad when they come back at you saying, well, all you did was write articles about what was going on. You weren't fighting. You may have been over there, but you weren't fighting. See how ignorant that sounds? You still deployed to a hostile environment. Whether you were in the fight or not is irrelevant. You were there. You were serving and doing what you had signed up to do. These are the things that when we get into these politics that really, really bother me and don't sit well with me. And this is what the other mark they try to put on Mr. Walz. And this is what they're saying now. Hours after Mr. Walz was announced as the Democrats' vice presidential candidate on Monday, Republicans attacked his tenure as governor, with much of the criticism focused on the timing of his decision to call in his state's National Guard. Trump's running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, told reporters this week that Walz allowed rioters to burn down Minneapolis in the summer of 2020. Walz sat by and let Minneapolis burn, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis wrote on X. Texas Governor Greg Abbott echoed that accusation. Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton said Walz could have stopped the rioting if he wanted to, while the Republican Party's research arm accused Walz of fleeing like a coward while Minneapolis burned. Even before Harris selected Walz, Trump criticized the governor on the subject. Every voter in Minnesota needs to know that when the violent mobs of anarchists and looters and Marxists came to burn down Minneapolis 4 years ago, remember me? I couldn't get your governor to act. Trump told the crowd at his rally in St. Cloud, Minnesota last month before falsely claiming that he, not Walz, activated the National Guard in response to the unrest. And the unrest they're talking about is after George Floyd was murdered. You remember in Minnesota, all the stuff that was going on, the burning, the rioting and everything. And now the Republican Party is coming out and saying that Governor Walz did not respond accordingly. He didn't deploy the National Guard early enough. He didn't do this. He didn't do that. All these different things that they want to say about his response to the George Floyd riots. Mind you, the Republicans still have not enacted the George Floyd Act that they said they were going to do after all of it was said and done. Keep that in mind. Donald Trump also said, I sent in the National Guard to save Minneapolis while Kamala Harris sided with the arsonists and rioters and raised money to bail out the criminals, Trump said. That is now. That is today. That is this week. But let's go back to right after the riots and the George Floyd murder happened. And let's see what the Republicans were saying then. And it says, Republicans are attacking Tim Walz's response to unrest in Minneapolis in 2020. But at the time, then President Donald Trump said he fully agreed with how the Minnesota governor handled rioting in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder, undercutting a key line of GOP attack this week after Walz was named Vice President Kamala Harris's 2024 running mate. I fully agree with the way he handled it the last couple of days, Trump said of Walz on a June 1st, 2020 call, during which he also described the Democratic governor as an excellent guy. You got a big National Guard out there that's ready to come in and fight like hell. I tell you, what they did in Minneapolis was incredible. They went in and dominated, and it happened immediately, Trump told the governors. Tim Walz, again, I was very happy with the last couple of days, Tim. You called up big numbers, and the big numbers knocked them out so fast, it was like bowling pins. This is what Donald Trump said on a call to the governors on June 1st of 2020, after the George Floyd murder. And he told Tim Walz that his response with the National Guard was above reproach. It was above reproach. You did everything. You were so excellent. But now he's saying that he had to call in the National Guard, not Tim Walz. Revisionist history, as I like to call it. Revisionist history. The call took place a week after George Floyd was killed. At the time and in the years since, Republicans publicly criticized Walz over whether he waited too long to call in Minnesota's National Guard. Trump's 2024 campaign, responding to CNN's request about his 2020 praise for Walz and the details of the call, said that he was only complimentary of the Minnesota governor, given that by June 1st, Walz had acted. They argued, however, that Trump had always been frustrated that Walz hadn't taken more action sooner. Walz first activated the guard on May 28th, 3 days after Floyd was killed, and the same day protesters lit the outside of the Minneapolis Police Department's 3rd precinct on fire. All I'm saying is this. You have this man who is now being nominated to be the VP for Kamala Harris. And now you have people questioning his military service and his response to the George Floyd murder with the National Guard. And the biggest reason they have a problem with the response, or they want to question the response to the National Guard, is because who were the people that were rioting? The people that were rioting looked like me. And there were some others that were sprinkled here and there, but they looked like me because it was a person that looked like me that was murdered on the streets with a knee to his neck. And the reason the Republican Party wants to press on the fact that he didn't deploy the National Guard enough time is because they think anytime we protest, the National Guard should be out there shooting rubber bullets and injuring us and maiming us, and even to the fact of using real bullets to kill us, because we should not have the right to protest. However, if you look at what's going on in Tennessee right now, each and every week, they got people jumping out the back of U-Hauls, walking down the street with khakis and polo shirts on, carrying flags upside down and wearing masks over their face. This is the new KKK. But no one has a problem with that, but they want to hold him accountable for riots that happened because of a murder in the streets. Help me understand. Help me understand. This is why I report the politics to you. Let me just say this first. I don't like politics. I really don't. But I know I need to read what's going on with politics to be aware. Not to be consumed, but to be aware. Because when you talk about politics, it's all about what you choose to believe compared to what you choose to understand for yourself and know the facts. And a lot of these people that are on the bandwagon with J.D. Vance and Donald Trump talking about Tim Walz, those people, no matter what you say to them, are not going to believe what you say because they said it first. They said it first. And as Julie Kena Piro said, I had to bring this up again. Trump is creativity fictional. And that's what Willie Brown said about him. Creativity fictional. Yeah. So as we go through this cycle, as we continue to hear these things, these smear campaigns and everything, I want you to really pay attention to what they're saying. Because as James Battle mentioned, you have a Republican Party, who is trying to minimize the service of a vice presidential nominee who served 24 honorable years in the service, being disparaged by a draft dodger, a person who got 5 deferments from serving during Vietnam due to bone spurs. Now you tell me which one is more honorable, the one who avoided serving or the one who actually served. You do the math. I don't have to do it for you. Y'all got it. This next story I want to follow up because this is something that I talked about back, and as I mentioned it earlier in the show, 2023, episode 24, July 27th, 2023. This is a story that this is a story from New Bern, Alabama. New Bern, Alabama. And I'm going to put a picture up just so you can recall. Y'all remember this? This is New Bern, Alabama. And on the left in the suit was the newly elected black mayor, Patrick Braxton. Patrick Braxton. And on the right is the former mayor. I didn't get his name this time. I got it last time we talked about it, but he's irrelevant at this point. But if you recall, Mr. Braxton had won the vote to become mayor of New Bern. But the white mayor and all his white colleagues refused to allow him to take office in the city. Mr. Braxton had to go to court. He had to go to court. And it says New Bern's first black mayor won in the courts, but the fight is far from over. Now, mind you, I want you to think about this. Mr. Braxton, Mayor Braxton, let me call him Mayor Braxton because he's the new mayor. Mayor Braxton was elected during the political season of 2020. Today is August 10th of 2024. And this week, Mr. Braxton was just appointed mayor after he won the election back in 2020. And this article says, and I got this article out of a publication called the Capital B. And it's a local national nonprofit news organization that centers Black voices, audience needs, and experiences, and partners with the communities we serve. Our national team produces in-depth journalism on topics of crucial importance to Black people across the country, such as politics, health, criminal justice, the environment, and rural issues. So I want you to, I always tell you this, the sources I use in a lot of cases are the Griot. Now I'm using Capital B, and I also use The Root. Those are three Black African-American driven journalism pages, news sites that you can go to and get news that caters to you and your views. Just to put it out there. I understand CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, if you watch it, all the major networks are fine. Capital B, the Griot, the Root, just for your own edification so you can understand where I get my sources from to find out what's going on with us and reported by us, for us. I digress. Let's go here. The sun rays beamed on Patrick Braxton's forehead as he raised his right hand and placed his left hand on the Bible held by his wife, Frida. He stood confidently, ready to execute his oath of office for all to see. That moment on an early August afternoon felt so similar yet so different for Braxton. Nearly 4 years earlier, he'd been sworn in as the first Black mayor of his hometown by the Hale County probate judge, but he never got to serve. The former majority white town council locked him out of town hall and reappointed themselves to their positions after ordering a special election that no one knew about. He experienced harassment and intimidation to keep him out of office. Ever since, Braxton has been fighting through the courts to hold on to the title of mayor and demand the town hold regular elections since it hadn't since the passage of Voting Rights Act of 1965. Last month, a federal judge signed a settlement agreement that reinstated Mr. Braxton to his post and allowed residents to exercise their right to vote. On August 3rd, dressed to the nines in a teal suit, he peered out into the crowd of hundreds of mostly Black folks. The heat index reached around 107 degrees, but it didn't matter. He was surrounded by his mother, daughter, wife, and peers. He grabbed the mic and thanked everyone for coming to witness his swearing-in ceremony. There he is, Mayor Braxton, the mayor of New Bern, Alabama, Mayor Braxton. Now we can celebrate the fact that he's been sworn in, but he was sworn in through the court of law, not through the normal election process, because you had white folks in Alabama who had never had an election for years. They were just putting people in the position who felt that he was not deserving or not worthy to be the mayor of New Bern, so they locked him out of office. And Mayor Braxton said, it's even sweeter the second time. He said, no more locked doors. We finna go. Now they put it like this. This is what he said. We finna go forward and go forward wide open. We've been held back too long. But he only has 1 year to serve until the 2025 municipal elections. In the meantime, he awaits Republican Governor Kay Ivey's confirmation of his appointed council members. If she doesn't respond in 90 days, a special election must be held by the end of the year. Separately, he's working with the local banks and former town council's accountant to locate financial records to perform an audit. Ooh, that's going to be, ooh, yeah, that's going to, ooh. When he does his audit, they're going to find out some things, I'm sure. But I bring this up to you because this man was elected into office. And here he is walking, and he had the support. These are other Bullock County black mayors supporting Mr. Braxton, the first black mayor of New Bern, Alabama. They're walking with him on that day. He got that TLC, and he clean, ain't he? Clean, ain't he? The brother has fought the fight. That brother has fought the fight. He wanted justice, and he got it through the courts, but it's not done. It is not done. He is still fighting. He's still got to fight in the courts. He's still waiting on still waiting on these people to do their jobs and appoint his other people, his city officials, because they've been pushing back on that, not wanting to do that either. But I seen this, and there was a statement that I seen, and I want to read this to you. And it goes with this case as many other cases. Let me go back to Mr. Mayor Braxton. This is when he's being sworn in. And this is Mr. Braxton, and this is the former mayor. And I want to read this statement that was made. And I hope it resonates with people. I hope it resonates. And this was from a commenter on the article. And I pulled it because it makes sense. And this is what the commenter said on the article. Don't ever tell black people to stop making it about race when white people will break the law to stop a black man from taking office. Let me read that one more time. I don't think y'all heard me. Let me move this one time. Let me say this one more time. Don't ever tell black people to stop making it about race when white people will break the law to stop a black man from taking office that he was duly elected to. See, this is where we get frustrated and we get upset. Because we always hear this country is not racist. Racism is not an issue. Why do you always make it about race? This is why. This right here is why. He was elected through the normal process that they haven't used since 1965. He was elected by his peers in the city of New Bern. And the white people that be chose to say, no, 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 we're locking you out. He had to go through the court system in order to be able to serve in the position he ran for, because there are certain white people in this country who feel that he is not worthy to be the mayor of a city. And they did everything in their power to keep him from becoming mayor. But when we bring these things up, we're told to stop making it about race. Well, we didn't make it about race. You did. You made it about race when you decided to lock him out from an election that was held in your city. You made it about race when you said that he couldn't be mayor because you didn't want to serve or be guided by a black person as the mayor of your city. You made it about race. We just spoke up that it was about race. And I say that because in most of these cases, we're not the ones who make it about race. It's made about race when you talk about redlining. It's made about race when you got people that got to take pictures off the walls to sell their homes. You make it about race when you say Kamala Harris is not a natural citizen of this country, or is she black? You make it about race when you talk about President Obama and whether he has birthrights here. You make it about race when you say that there's black jobs, that the people that are coming here trying to flee their countries and they're taking black jobs, not just jobs, but black jobs. You make it about race when you make these statements. Stop telling me that we're making it about race when you're the ones that make it about race, not only by what you say, but by your actions and what you do. Now, I say that because this is 2024. The civil rights movement was during my time when I was born in 1966. I am 58 years old. 58. My mother was born, I'd put her age out there, 1944. The fights that we're fighting now are the same fights that her parents and her parents' parents were fighting in 1944 and before. But when we recognize and we speak on these things freely like we can, the first defense that those folks who don't want us to have any prosperity or any rights in this country say, why do you always make it about race? We didn't. You did. You made it about race when you brought people over here on ships and made them slaves. You did when you chose not to give people equal rights, not by what you said you were going to do by the Constitution, but what you chose to do to overlook the words that you said people would have in this country. But we're the ones that make it about race. Really? Really? Stop. Stop telling us that we're making it about race when it's always been about race from day one. This superiority complex, this superiority of mindset that if you're black, you're not worthy. If you immigrate here from another country, you're less than. Let's look at history. Every white person in this country migrated from here, from Europe. Just because you were born here doesn't mean you are from here. Your ancestors are not even from here. You came from somewhere else, just like all the immigrants that you want to talk about or all the people seeking asylum here, they came from somewhere else. So did you and your ancestral background. So stop making it seem like the United States of America was always a white country, because it wasn't. It was filled with indigenous people. Be aware, be fully aware that what happened there in New Bern, Alabama, that's not the only place it's happening. If you think for 1 second that what happened on January 6th could not be happening in other places at a smaller scale, then you're blind to the processes of what's going on. These things that go on, they continue to go on, and they will continue to go on unless we stand up and say no more. Unless we get involved and say, I'm here now. The one thing that I would say about Mayor Braxton, he didn't cower down. He didn't give up. He kept fighting. Why did he keep fighting? Because he's looking for a better way to serve his people in New Bern, Alabama, better than the way they've been served previously. By putting himself in a position to be the person that says what goes on in his city, no matter what the obstacles. I'm sure there have been theft threats. I'm sure there's been all kinds of things done towards Mr. Mayor Braxton. Let me get it right. But he ain't gave up. He ain't given up. He went to the courts. He's done everything he could do. And my biggest question is this. Where's the Department of Justice in this case? Where is the DOJ investigating what went on in New Bern, Alabama? Why aren't they involved, and why weren't they involved in what was going on in New Bern, Alabama? And any of the other places that this type of stuff is going on? Not sure, but I tell you what, pay attention. Pay attention. That's why I tell you, it's good to vote. It's very important to vote, but it's also important to be a part of the process. And we have to be involved in the process more and more as we look at these things that they're trying to do. First, it's talking about mail-in ballots and all these different things. But at the end of the day, mail-in ballots been going on for a long time. Now, all of a sudden, it's an issue. James Battle, I found a document this week that showed where the slave owners that owned my great-great-grandfather and grandmother received reparations from the government, and the free slaves only received the right to continue working for them on their plantation. I have the actual contract. I seen that post on Facebook, man, and I was going to give you a call this week. But think about that. I want everybody to listen to what James Battle's saying here. He found a document that shows where the slave owners that owned his great-great-grandfather and grandmother, they received reparations after they were freed. They gave the slave owners money because now they didn't have the labor on their plantation. However, and the free slaves only received the right to continue working for them on their plantation. So they got paid because they lost the right to have slaves. But the people who were enslaved still worked on the plantation. Make it make sense. But as that statement said that I just read, don't ever tell black people to stop making it about race when white people will break the law to stop a black man from taking office. I'm going to leave it at that today. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Thank y'all. I appreciate y'all. I'll see y'all again next week. And as I always say before I sign off, love yourself, love one another, keep your head up, and most definitely keep your faith in God. And I'm out, and I'll see y'all again next week. Peace.